Just as a disclaimer, we want you to know that some of the movies that we will be reviewing were shot in a different time and era where people of race and sex were not treated equally. We understand this and hope you do too. The movies or anything that happened on the sets are not the views of this podcast or what this show is intended to be all about.
Exactly. And we want to give due diligence in presenting the movie and not the views of the cast or directors or anyone involved. But we also feel it's necessary to let the audience know some of the background information to get a feel for what was happening at the time of shooting the film. Again, we hope you understand that we do not agree with everything that went on, and we just want to give out the information. And with that being said, hope you enjoy the show.
There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
Month of November, hot chocolate, and a small cameo of a child's face, imperfect only in its solemnity. And these are the improbable ingredients to a human emotion. An emotion, say, like fear. But in a moment, this woman, Helen Foley, will realize fear. She will understand what are the properties of terror. A little girl will lead her by the hand and walk with her into a nightmare.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and once again, I'm joined by 80Z. 80s, how you doing today?
Doing well today, 80Z in the house, ready to jump into this episode, Nightmare as a Child.
Yeah, episode 29, so we're slowly creeping away to the end of season 1. So I guess without further ado, Eric, why don't you go ahead and take us away?
Yeah. And, by the way, if you like the podcast, be a friend, tell a friend. If you hate it, just act like it never happened.
No, if you hate it, tell an enemy, right?
Yeah, tell an enemy. Make a friend of an enemy. I don't know. Anyway, Nightmare as a Child.
What is it they always say? The enemy of the enemy is my friend, or something.
Exactly right. We've got, hopefully we'll make a lot of friends in our podcast here. All right, Nightmare as a Child, The Twilight Zone, Season number 1, Episode 29. We are already to Episode 29. It was written by Rod Serling, and it was directed by Alvin Ganzer. And Jimbo, you may have some information as to why Alvin Ganzer, do you remember why he ended up directing this episode? It was supposed to be Charles Beaumont, I believe, but the whole airplane accident, I think we covered that in the Purple Testament. You're looking
all right.
Like you don't.
I mean, I remember vaguely, but I didn't write any of that stuff down for this episode.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm just saying, I know we have some of the same material, so the one book that you have, I didn't go into that book for research. I figured I'd let you do that book for research, so I use the ones that I have that you don't have, so that way we don't get the same information or miscommunicate or something. So
Gotcha. Alvin Ganzer, the director for this particular episode. The original air date was April the 29th, 1960, and the total production cost is quite under the benchmark of $50,000 this time. It's at $38,197.11. So if we adjust that for inflation, we're looking at about $339,403.57 in today's dollars. The technical specs for this particular episode is a 25-minute runtime. The sound mix is mono. Westrex recording system. The color is black and white, of course. And the aspect ratio is 1.33/1. And the negative format is 35 millimeter. It's a spherical cinematographic process. And the printed film format is, of course, a 35 millimeter. Jimbo, you want to roll with the cast?
Sure. We had, starring the main character, Janice Rule. She played Helen Foley. A little interesting fact about the name Helen Foley. She was actually one of Rod Serling's teachers, one of his favorite teachers. So I thought that was pretty interesting that she had the name in this episode. Then you had Terry Burnham as Marky, which played the little girl. You had Shepard Strudwick as Peter Selden, and he was in All the King's Men from 1949. He was also in A Place in the Sun with Elizabeth Taylor in 1951. Yes, sir.
Right. No, I'm just nodding along.
And by the way, Marky, Terry Burnham, she was in, and I know Eric's getting ready to do a little deeper dive into her biography, but she was in Imitation of Life, where she played Susie, and she was also in Boy, Did I Get a Wrong Number, starring Bob Hope in 1966. Michael Fox played the Doctor. He's famous for, if you've ever seen Young Frankenstein, he was Helga's father. He was in Over the Top as Jim Olsen, and he was in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. He was the TV commercial man in that. You had Suzanne Capito, which was Morgan Brittany as the little girl. She's uncredited. And then Eric, we had Joseph V. Perry as the police lieutenant, and you know what he was in? Karate Kid 3, where he played Uncle Louie. And he was also in Heart Shots Part 2 as a singing waiter.
Okay.
So,
all right. Who
was in
Over the Top again?
His name is Michael Fox.
Michael Fox. Okay, the Doctor. Yeah, I'm going to save some audio of the Doctor, actually, at the end of the episode. So, yeah, you'll hear his voice coming through the podcast this week. You want me to go ahead and take the plot next?
No, why don't you go ahead and do the little biography of Terry Burnham? Okay.
So the bio of Terry Burnham, she's the blonde American actress. She was an actress from the age of 4 in the mid-50s and all the way to the early 70s. She actually has a pretty sad story of her real life. Obviously, this probably sticks out as her most memorable performance here in the Twilight Zone. And in this episode, she played a blank-faced girl who delivered a deathly warning here in this episode, and she retired as an actress and was living in Long Beach, California, really after living in obscurity for the better part of her life. She had a lot of obsessive fans, I guess you could characterize them as obsessive fans. But Jimbo, I don't know if you knew this, there is a TwilightZoneMuseum.com. There's a web page associated with Twilight Zone memorabilia and sort of things, and there's a curator of this, and I neglected to write his name down. I think his name is in my notes here. Andrew Ramage. He runs the TwilightZoneMuseum.com, and he's the curator. And basically, it's a lot of photos of memorabilia and props and things that they put on display here on like the website and stuff. And he writes this about her, that she had a very difficult life. I got some information here about she attended Mark Twain Elementary School and Bancroft Jr. Lakewood High Schools in California. She was a child actress, and she performed alongside some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Her acting credits include roles in television programs like I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, which I watched the episode of Leave It to Beaver. If you're interested in seeing Terry Burnham, she's in the episode, I think it's in season 6. It's called Beaver's Autobiography. And she plays the role of, I think her name in that episode is Virginia, and she's like the best friend of a girl named Betsy in that episode. So she was on Wagon Train, and she was in the 1959 Ross Hunter Universal International Pictures film called Imitation of Life. She was with Lana Turner in that movie. And some sad things about her life when, this is just a paragraph here I'm going to pull out. When someone dies in Los Angeles County, officials work to notify the next of kin, and if no one can come forward, they wait for 3 years and bury the dead. The embalmed body, it remains in the L.A. County morgue. So apparently when she passed away, she sat in the L.A. County morgue for a long time because there was no next of kin registered to her. So
Was
after,
she not married?
I don't think she had was married or had any extended family.
Brothers or sisters?
Apparently, according to this. So the unclaimed dead, after 3 years, are cremated, and then they end up going into a common grave in the county's public cemetery. Anyone can buy the remains that have gone unclaimed for 2 years, according to the spokesman from the morgue. So fans, including a guy named Reuben Phoebus of New York, worried that Burnham would be buried in a common grave. And according to documents from the LA County morgue, Phoebus received authority to have her ashes transported to him in New York. The charges included $340 for cremation. And even if you don't know he says, this is him quoting here, he says, even if you don't know a person, you develop a relationship, as strange as it sounds. It does kind of sound strange, but he says Phoebus pursued an autograph from her for about 15 years, and he decided that a common grave was not fitting for Burnham, whose death certificate says that she died of cardiac arrest, but also dealt with hypertension, diabetes, and depression. And then it goes on and says that he kind of became disgusted with himself because here I am chasing an autograph, and that this is an actual person and not just an autograph. She's a human being with hopes and dreams just like anyone else. I'm quoting Phoebus here. And then it goes on to talk about how she kind of became a real recluse in her later life and actually ended up living in like a trailer in Compton, California towards the end of her life. Basically, by the age of 22, she was a pretty famous, semi-famous child actress, and I think she was on some Disney shows as well. But she basically fell off the planet by age 22, and she didn't do very many interviews at all. She didn't want to be in the public eye in any way, shape, or form. And as the legend goes, someone won an auction for Burnham's storage unit in Southern California, and sources say that this was around 2010. I think she died in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And many of her personal records, photos, tax documents were inside of the storage unit. Acting contracts and other things went on. You know, they went. The storage unit goes up for bid, and someone won it, and then someone put a lot of her memorabilia up on eBay, I guess. And let me read down a little bit further. This was a good paragraph, and Terry Burnham did this episode, Nightmare as a Child, the one that we're referencing now, at the age of 10. She played a strange little girl who showed up at a woman's apartment to warn her of a murder. Unnerved by her stone-faced child, the woman offered to make some hot chocolate. "I'm in no hurry," the little girl replies, unflinching. As it turns out, the woman and the girl were the same person. Born in the mind of Rod Serling and separated by the decades, the girl had watched her mother die at the hands of the killer. In an episode of psychologic exploration, the girl caught up with her older self to warn that her mother's murderer stood outside the apartment door. That role and others brought Burnham a modicum of fame, and she appeared to struggle with maintaining a typical childhood. And she's quoted here saying, "I never was fully accepted as part of the group by other children," Burnham told the Long Beach Independent Press Telegram in 1967. "If I paid no attention to the jungle gym jibes, they thought I was stuck up. If I tried to return a pleasant answer, they labeled me as bragging." But reports of those who claim to have known Burnham in her early youth are universally positive. So I kind of have woven a little bit of the plot into that bio about Terry Burnham. And it's actually kind of sad, her life, and how her real life played out, kind of paralleling some of her solemnness and wise character that she plays kind of in this episode. So I thought that was kind of interesting to dive into her life, and kind of sad at the same time.
And how crazy is it just to get a storage locker and have all that classic, just stuff that you would think that, if you got that, why wouldn't you hang on to that instead of sell it? Somebody just tried to make a quick dollar out of that, but that'd be something to hang on to.
I mean,
the guy that went after her ashes, that's
pretty
a little
strange.
Weird.
Yeah, it's pretty strange.
Yeah, that's a little weird. I guess if you went after her ashes and gave her a proper burial, it would be different. But we don't have the rest of that story. You know what I mean?
The end of the story, I didn't mean to interrupt Jimbo, but the end of the story is that guy, I'm not sure exactly how, the details are unclear on, but I think he at some point returned those ashes, and it says she is buried in a cemetery in California somewhere now, like close to relatives. I read a snippet there somewhere, but I'm not quite sure how that came to be. But yeah, initially
well, you said
this
relatives.
guy,
is that like her parents?
it said her mother. So
Okay.
I'm not. It's unclear how that all came to be, but yeah, it's kind of really sad. Like, you know, those storage lockers, if you don't keep up on them, then they go up for bid. I know people are probably very familiar with, like, you know, Storage Wars. Yeah, shows like that. But
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, I guess I want to say, like, her cap and gown from high school was in some of the memorabilia that was taken, and, like, really personal stuff like contracts and photographs. And I know what it was. There was letters from family members were in that stash, and letters from, like, boyfriends and things like that. So really personal stuff that, you know, was just taken and put up for auction, a lot of it.
I wonder why she left Hollywood, though. Or why she stopped acting. Did the parts just stop coming in? Or did she just get burnt out? You know what I mean?
No.
That's awful strange.
No idea. But really,
Very interesting.
Really kind of sad, but interesting at the same time.
Still not going to change my feelings on this episode, but I mean, it's still sad.
So I kind of covered the plot in that little bio there. So, Jimbo, do you want to start us off, maybe? And I've been talking a long time. You want to walk through the first part of the episode?
Sure. So I'll go ahead, since I just watched this right before we sit down to record. So we have Helen. We find out she's a school teacher, and she's coming home from, I guess, school, you could say. And she goes to this apartment building, and she goes, and as she's walking by, you see this little girl sitting on the stairs. And Helen goes and opens the door and turns around and says, "Oh, hey, how are you? You know, you must be new here." And she's like, nah, I guess. And so she basically, hey, would you like to come in for some hot chocolate? If we find out, I think through Rod Serling's opening, that this is set in November. Mm-hmm. So it's a little cold outside. So we know it's almost winter time. And I thought it was very interesting that you never leave the apartment building for this episode. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll dive into a little bit about why I think that later towards the end of the episode, with my thoughts of how I was perceiving this. But so she invites the little girl in, and this little girl is weird. I mean, she is straight weird. I mean, I've met some weird kids in my lifetime, but this one, she's always just sitting there staring off into space. I mean, if you watch the episode, she'll turn and she'll talk to Helen, and then she just sits there and looks off into space. And I was like, this girl, she's off a rocker. I could already tell from the beginning of the episode, I'm not going to like this kid. And
off a rocker, huh?
Yeah, off a rocker. I mean, so, you know, she's like, well, but you know, yeah, I'll come in for some hot chocolate. She's like, but I know you like hot chocolate too, but you don't like marshmallows. And she's like, I don't like marshmallows either. And I'm like, well, this kid is just, she's out there. So, you know, she comes in, and that little girl just comes in, and she just comes in and sits down in that chair. You know what I mean? Yeah. Go ahead, Eric. You can take it away, because I'm just going to
just one interjection. It's interesting. Kind of the giveaway in the beginning that something is off is that Marky, as we come to find out will be her name, she knows everything about Helen Foley. You know,
everything.
And then one of the things that triggered me too was the first thing that Helen says to her when they come into the apartment is, "Hey, don't you need to call your mom and tell her what you're at, where you're doing, or what you're at, or whatever?" And she's like, "No, that won't be necessary." You know, right, and it's like, okay, well, this is like a 10-year-old kid, and her mom doesn't need to know where she's at. And also another dead giveaway. It becomes fairly apparent that, you know, that it's a small twist, but that this is a younger version of Miss Helen Foley. We'll just go ahead and introduce that right up front. And one of the dead giveaways is that we find, I guess it's a little bit later in the episode, but that Mrs. Foley, or Miss Foley, and Marky have the same scar, burn mark, just below their elbow. And, you know, they're just subtle clues that keep happening as they have this conversation. And you're right, Jimbo. Most of the episode, is inside of this apartment, which might have to do with why the budget was so low, because they didn't have to really do any other setups or anything.
Exactly. But, and then Marky's like, hey, you ever see somebody that might look familiar to you? And Helen's like, well, I suppose. She's like, yeah, like today. Did you see, when you were leaving school, did you happen to see the guy that was at the stoplight in his car, and you looked at him? And Helen's like, this kid is crazy.
Right.
You know
Who
what I
are
mean?
you?
And then she starts thinking about it. She's like, well, yeah, there was a guy, that I looked at or whatever. And I mean, this kid, she's like a barbecue sauce short of a Happy Meal, okay? Just what I can tell. She's like, don't you remember? Why can't you remember? Are you remembering now? I mean, just badgering this poor lady. Yeah. And if I was that lady, I would have kicked her out of my house right then and there, dude. I was like, okay, you can just go. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to sit here and let you belittle me in my own apartment or whatever.
Yeah. So Helen, makes her the cocoa, and they both sit down, and she is grilling Helen. Obviously, we know, we kind of discover early on that it's, again, the younger version of herself. And we come also to find out that Helen has a repressed memory. I don't want to I can go ahead and give it away, because most of you probably watched the episode by the time you come to our podcast. But she has a repressed memory of a very traumatic incident that happened in her life. And it seems like Marky is really in tune, because, Helen, another scene, she goes and she grabs like a handkerchief out of her purse, and she says, oh, it's really hot in here. But as she's walking over to get the handkerchief, Marky says, are you feeling hot? Are you feeling warm? Or something like that. And it's almost like these two are in tune with one another, and but not only that,
if you watch her face, where she asks her what her name is, and she says, my name's Marky, and it kind of like Helen just kind of stops, like she's stunned, like, I've heard that name before, but I don't, it's familiar, but I can't put one and one together to make two. So I thought that was very interesting too.
Yeah. And she'll come to remember a lot of things. One of which being that surrounds the name Marky, that was what she was called as a nickname. But once she goes and, takes the little handkerchief, there's like a knock on the door. And so little Marky wants to run out. She's like, I got to get out of here. I'll come back later.
She's like, he's here. I got to go.
Yeah,
I'm going out the back door, back window, whatever.
Stage left and goes out the back door. And then we hear a knock on the door. And this is when we're introduced to Shepard Sturwick's character, Peter Selden. And he enters the apartment, and like one of his first lines is like, oh, I got you stumped. Well, actually, he gives a little bit of an introduction and description of who he is on the other side of the door, and he tells her, Helen, that he used to work for her mother.
Hey, I knew your mother.
Yeah,
right.
And I used to work for her about 18 or 19 years ago. And he says, my name's Peter Selden. She opens the door and invites him in. They sit down and have a conversation. And
all right, I'm about ready to go. Here's where we're getting ready to start going into some stuff that is ridiculous.
Okay.
If you remember this guy, Peter comes in and he says, oh, by the way, I worked with your mom. And he's like, oh, by the way, I had a crush on you. This girl was 10 or 11 years old.
Wait.
For one, no, let me just get off my rabbit trail. Dude, what is up with this? You'll find out later in the episode that I won't spoil it here, but when he sees her, okay, I'm going to have to spoil it just because I have to.
Go for it.
But he's the one that actually kills her mom, and Marky's seen this in her bed, okay, and he was coming in there to kill her. This is a grown man. That girl was 10 or 11. This is child molestation to a T. And that really made me mad. That's one reason I do not like this episode. And Rod Serling was always pushing limits, right? Mm-hmm. But when he did this, I hated this episode so much more just for that simple fact. I was like, I put that together and it just really grind my gears, boiled my blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he definitely was pushing the limits. I kind of thought, as watching this, that definitely stuck out to me as well. The whole crush. I was like, well, maybe crush meant something, language changes over time. And I thought, well, maybe crush just meant fond of. And then, I did a little bit in thinking and, like, digging in, and I'm like, no, I think he is setting the table of some kind of abuse here. It's very subtle. And, that would make a lot of sense of that traumatic event happening in her life, why she would block out all of her memory.
And when he first said it, I was like, okay, well, maybe this, he said he knew her mother. Maybe he was just a boy in the neighborhood that ran errands for his mom and all that. I was like, okay, he had a crush on her, a childhood crush. But then when you get to the real, the backstory and it shows the flashback, and he's still a grown man in that episode or in that part, and then he starts coming to her bedroom or whatever, and she screams, and he takes off running. That's when I really had a problem with it.
Here's part B to that. He pulls out a photo out of his jacket pocket of her as a little girl. It's Marky in the episode, but it's really the representation of her as Helen as a little girl. And he claims, now I don't know, he could be telling the truth, but he claims that her mother gave him the photo. Now, that seems kind of strange for someone's mother to give their employee a photo of their young daughter. That just doesn't jive. Rod was pushing, this was probably, well, not probably, it was a very taboo topic that was probably never touched on in general life, let alone, television. So he was pushing the envelope there. It doesn't make me not like the episode, but it's definitely taboo for the time. And I picked up on that as well. But the photo kind of sealed the deal for me, like, this guy is, he's a pervert. And
that's, don't get me wrong. Does people give other people, it's usually married couples, here's our kids, school picture or whatever. Okay, I get it. But I don't go to work and pass out my kids' pictures to my fellow coworkers.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's just not right. So as we come along, she offers him cocoa, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And, so she goes and grabs the cup, and she turns around, and the cocoa has not been touched. So she's like, that's weird.
That was interesting to me. What was your take on that? Do you think, because Helen, there's two cups, right? Helen takes a few sips and sets it down. So if Marky is her, so there would only be like 2 sips taken out, but she makes the declaration like, or kind of says off the cuff like, I thought she finished her cocoa, but it looks like she hasn't even touched it, which would make sense that the cup was still full of cocoa if it really is Helen, and this is just a figment of her imagination that she's created. Marky,
See,
that she hadn't touched her cocoa.
That's something that I think Rod left out that you don't really know. And when we get to the end of the episode, I'm going to throw something else because I think the ending could have been a lot better if they would have did it something else. But I genuinely think that she sees the little girl. I don't think it's all, I don't think it's all in her mind like, here, let me, I'm making 2 cups, here's mine, here's yours. And you actually see the little girl pick it up and, I can't remember if she sips it. I think she does. I just watched it, but that's just a small thing. Right. So I have no reason to doubt that she actually did drink some of the hot chocolate at this point, you know what I mean? But that cup is still full. It still looks like it hasn't been touched.
Yeah.
And when he pulls that picture out, she's like, and he's like, well, that is you. He's like, this is you. And that's when she's like, what am I'm going crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is like Marky is like a personification of her young self. And Marky will explain that later in the episode. I'm you at 10 years old. I'm you. And she's really pushing Helen to remember. You got to remember. Can you go back and, she's trying to unlock these memories, to try to bring them to light.
Well, not only that, but now you have Peter there, and Peter's like, hey, do you remember anything about, what happened or whatever? And you're like, and he's awful, I guess, pushy, interrogative, about, hey, what did you see? Do you remember anything? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? And she starts thinking, and she's like, go ahead. I know you got something to say.
No, you're right on. I thought it was interesting. I'll throw this out to you. If he was keeping tabs on her, like he says, well, I followed you from Chicago when she went to go live with an aunt after the death of her mother, and then through college. And he says, I've been keeping tabs on you over the last 19 years. It was almost like
he doesn't tell her that here. He tells her that when he comes back.
Well, I'm just talking in general, so because we're kind of out of order here in the episode, but
right.
Just focusing in on, it was almost like he was asking her inquisitive questions, trying to get her to remember what happened. It was almost like he was toying with her. If he had, for instance, if he had just come there he could easily have solved this problem by just walking in and murdering her, right? And whether she remembered or not.
At any point of this whole story, he could have taken care of this.
It's almost like he is toying with her so that he can get her to remember it, so that he can then murder her. And so it's almost
ridiculous.
sick. Yeah, it's almost like a sick kind of thing.
But also, when he shows her the picture, and then she starts hearing that twinkle, twinkle, little star, and she kind of stops, like, he's like, don't you hear that? He's like, I don't hear anything. He's like, she's singing, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or whatever. And it's this point where they really lost me in the episode because she basically passes out, lays down, whatever, and the guy is gone. Why? This is another continuity thing for me. Why would you leave if you know she's getting her memories back? You should have just offed her right there and left.
Yeah.
This is something I did not understand. There's no explanation as why she's laying on this couch after hearing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You see her, sitting up or whatever, like she had fallen, taking a nap or whatever, and the guy is gone.
And then Selden,
why?
He just reappears. Like, right after her nap. Then, like, there's no knock on the door. There's no, like, hey, I'm back. It's just, like, all of a sudden she wakes up from this, like, passing out nap / thing, and then he just reappears in her apartment again. And it's weird. Really
not
weird.
Yet. No, it's not yet, because I think this is where Marky comes back. And this is where they discover that she tells her, she's like, well, won't your mother be worried? She's like, I don't have a mother.
Yeah.
And then she says, well, that's when she grabs her arm and pulls up her thing, and she's got the burn. She's like, I am you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think this is where that whole scene just bugs me to death, because why does he just leave her there? I mean, so she's like, I'm you, Helen, I'm you. And she's like, don't you remember the man in the back room? You know what I mean? And so now her memories is starting to come together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is where you have the flashback of, you see the men in the back with the shadows, which is really well done, where he shoves the woman to the ground and he has like a candlestick or something, telephone, something, billy club, and hits her mother in the head. And then you see him start coming into her room, which we won't go into that again because that makes me mad anyway. But then she screams, and then you see the shadow just start running off the thing. And so this is where she's like, now she actually remembers. And now she turns around where Marky was, and the guy is standing there. Peter is now standing there, which is really creepy to begin with. And he's like, I wondered when it would all start making sense. He's like, I'm the one. He's like, I killed your mother. I mean, this guy, why didn't you just tell her this to begin with? He's like, I was having some trouble with the books. Your mother was helping me, and, I had to do something about your mother, because your mother was basically going to snitch on me about the miscalculating of the numbers or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, he's like, I had to do it. So here's where we go. Okay, Helen starts, and she runs over she pushes him away, and she goes out to the door, and she runs across to the neighbor, starts banging on the door, hey, yeah. And if you notice this, she turns, and the guy is right there now. The guy he would have had to, why didn't he just come up behind her and grab her from the door? No, he like make a beeline, like behind her. If you watch the episode, she turns and runs to the next door, and he's right there and grabs her. And so they start struggling. And then basically the guy, during the struggle, falls over the balcony, falls down the steps, breaks his neck, I guess, and end up dead on the bottom of the floor.
Not a good stunt double if you look really closely.
No. Right.
You could definitely tell.
Here's what I wish would have happened right there, okay? Let's say he's got Helen and they're struggling or whatever. I wish little Marky would have appeared, just maybe at the top of the steps or something, and he seen her, and the shock from seeing her made him fall down the stairs. Instead of this, there's no way that guy got pushed off the stairs like that from her. There's just no way going over the railing like that.
That's an interesting ending. I like that.
Having Marky standing there?
Yeah, so
to me that would have been like, You know, it would have been like, oh, then maybe he would have stumbled. Instead of this giving this overpowering, this man, no, I'm not buying it. That's why I didn't like this episode.
Boy, you're really critical of that little scene.
Oh, man. I mean, it's just... I don't know how, if you watch it, I don't know how she I mean, there was just a little space like this that he went flying over the rail, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't think she would have had that much strength to do it. Now, I guess adrenaline and all that, but, so, yeah. So then we come to this thing where the cops and everybody are here. So the cops have finally arrived, and the guy's down at the bottom of the stairs, dead. And I thought this was a really interesting quote that the doctor gives to, I think it's one of the detectives or the policeman. He's like, the human imagination is often weird, though sometimes it leads to salvation. And, you know, I sit there and I pondered that, and it's just a weird quote.
Yeah.
I just, you know what I mean?
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I was going to stick that audio in. Why don't we stick the audio in right here? And it's about 30. It's about I don't know how many seconds, and we'll get the full quote, and we'll let our listeners see what they think.
She's a fortunate woman. She'd be a homicide victim if she were less fortunate. What about that child she keeps talking about? The child is her. At least she conjured up the child. It was a part of her buried deep inside. A memory, a recollection that finally had to come out. And when it did, it took the form of herself as a child. Weird. Really weird. The human imagination is often weird. Sometimes it means salvation.
All right. And there's the quote from the doctor there, and it's totality.
And did you think it was weird that he said, yeah, I think she can stay by herself now? Did you find that weird at all?
I must have missed that, but I do have some in my observations here. I looked something up on WebMD. I know it just kind of coincided with what the doctor.
Go full circle here.
Yeah, because the doctor kind of gives, I think, one of the best, interpretations of, kind of what's taken place in the episode. It says this dissociative amnesia occurs when a person blocks out certain information, usually associated with a stressful or traumatic event, leaving them unable to remember important personal information. With this disorder, the degree of memory loss goes beyond normal forgetfulness and includes gaps in memory for long periods of time or of memories involving a traumatic event. So that's just a simple paragraph of basically what's going on in this episode from a medical perspective. And obviously the doctor there was trying to explain that for the viewers. Rod wanted to throw that in just for information.
But also, at this point, the episode is still not over.
That's true.
So now you have Helen in the apartment. And she hears twinkle, twinkle, and she's like, oh no, is Marky back? Am I going crazy? And she goes over to the door and opens it up, and there's another new girl, little girl sitting on the stairs with a doll. And she's like, oh, it's nice to see you. She's like, oh yeah, I'm new. She's like, are you new? She's like, yeah. She's like, well, I'm very nice, I'm very friendly or whatever. And I think what was very interesting from this interaction to the beginning interaction with Marky is the smile that she gave Marky at the beginning was kind of like a forced smile, like, kid on the stairs, give him a half-hearted smile. And this one, if you watch her expression on her face, she actually just, it's like full of life now, And I thought that was really well done too. Like the weight of the world, she remembered everything and she was now free.
Exactly.
But one thing I didn't, another thing I was kind of drawn for is since you never actually left the apartment, I kind of played that into that's how she was on the inside. She never really ventured out. She never really left her inner thing. Everything was always done. I go to school this time. I do this. I do this. I do this. Mm-hmm. And then once it's like giving her a whole new outlook on life. But I thought that, and then my mind really started wondering about something like, well, maybe this is really a psychiatric ward, and that's why the doctor was there. And is she okay to be by herself now, and all that? So I went really deep out on that end, and I was like, I had to pull it back. I was like, no, I don't think it's that going that. I'm not going that deep with it. You know what I mean? But it was something to think about. It did cross my mind because she's seeing things. You have doctors there, and then when the doctor said, I think she's okay to be on her own now, and I was like, well, maybe she was in like general population. Now she's in solitary confinement or whatever. You know what I mean? So, but I think I was just overthinking that. But I do think that never going outside, it does play a significant thing from what she was experiencing as a child to now, where you can tell she's a different person.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the weight of the world, like you just said, it was lifted off her. I never considered the fact about her being indoors and all the ramifications of that and how that played. Just a quick bit of trivia: the little girl on the steps at the end of this episode, it is the acting debut. She's uncredited of Morgan Brittany. She's an uncredited actress in this episode, and even though she had several lines at the end, and she actually went on. You can look her up, and she's got some acting credits to her name as well throughout the 70s and 80s and so forth.
Yeah, also lead character Helen Foley was also the name of the lead character in the remake of It's a Good Life for the Twilight Zone, the movie in 1983. Kathleen Quinlan portrays Helen Foley, who ultimately befriends the monster. The original segment did not have Helen Foley as a character, but did see Billy Mumy play the monster. Later that same year, director Alvin Ganzer would again work with Terry Burnham on the Hawaiian Eye episode with This Ring from 1960, in which she played a character named Patty Selden. And Michael Fox, the Doctor, later played Tom Carter in the Twilight Zone Examination Day and a message from Charity in 1985. So, Eric, what's your thoughts on this episode?
Just one other quick bit of trivia. Terry Burnham, who played Marky, also shared the screen with Shepard Strudwick again. Later in this same year, 1960, she played in a thriller called The Mark of the Hand. And she actually... Shepard Strudwick actually played her father in this particular episode. She was his daughter. So,
well, haven't we come full circle with that?
Yeah, we have. We really have. They joined forces again later, I guess, down the road. My thoughts are, I really liked the acting of Terry Burnham. I know you would probably disagree. I thought Helen Foley described it very well. She played a part that was well beyond her years. She was, like Helen described her as solemn and wise. I think that would be a good characterization. You know, she played a part of someone who was much older. She did very well, I thought. I thought the acting overall was really good by the three main characters. This episode takes a lot of heat because there's no unexplainable phenomenon in this particular Twilight Zone. It's sort of straightforward, kind of with it's kind of, I won't say easily, but it's explained pretty thoroughly. There's no major, like, unexplainable twist, if you know what I'm saying, Jimbo. Like, there's no...
The Twilight Zone twist.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of the Twilight Zone, even though the Twilight Zone has to do with the mind and the imagination coming together, you know, and all that. I don't know that that's a fair criticism because, remember, we're only in a season 1, so sort of the criteria for our Twilight Zone episode wasn't fully developed yet. So you got to have to take that in consideration and really understand that it was good that Rod could write a story that was just a good story. It was a good tale, and it didn't necessarily have to have unexplained phenomenon and entrenched in sci-fi, if you will. It was just a good tale. I liked it. I don't think it would be top 10, but it wasn't a bad episode. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. Your thoughts?
I'm not a fan. For one, that little girl was creepy, and I didn't care for her acting at all. It was just over the top, ridiculous. Now, I will Janice Roll as Helen Foley. I think that if you watch her character, you can see where her acting comes into play, because I think, personally, I think that it looked like she was older because of the weight that has been put on her. So as far as the weight of not remembering stuff, her mother's death, everything that she suppressed, because when the guy comes, Peter comes in, and, you know, he may be a few years older than her, but they look about, you know, almost the same age. You know what I mean? And I think that's, you know, if she was only 10 or 11 when her mother got killed, and he killed her mother, and he was working with her mother, so he's got to at least be 10, 15, 20 years older than her.
Yeah.
But if you look at him, she looks like she's seen the weight of the world has been on her.
Yeah.
And I think you can tell that. But I think she did a fantastic job. Peter. I think he was a cruel, unusual man. He played the part perfectly, but just the whole undertone of, after you watch it and you see that whole thing with "I had a crush on you," it just ruined it for me, man, because I have zero tolerance for any of that kind of stuff. When there's something that's doing harm to children or anything, that's one of my passions in life, where I can't stand anything being done to children. You have the sex trafficking now, you have the missing children, any of that stuff, it just gets under my skin, and I have a big heart for those kids.
I agree with you 100%, but I think Rod was trying to maybe bring that to light in the vehicle that he had. Maybe he was trying to expose things that were normally in that time and era suppressed way more than they are now. They're more openly talked about and advocated for those victims a lot more today than they were then. It was in that era, a lot of that stuff was swept under the rug, and maybe he was using his show as a vehicle to do that. I don't know.
Right. It's not the first time. It's not the first time we've seen him do something like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? To me, it's not a top 10 episode.
I agree.
I would put it. I don't even know if it's middle of the pack. I think it's closer to the bottom third than the upper echelon of episodes. And we've seen some really great episodes. And next week is no different, because that is one of the highlights of season 1, in my personal opinion. Definitely in my top 3, probably top 5. It could fight for the 1 or 2 spot. That's how good it is. It's got an argument and all that. So that will be a stop at Willoughby. I think it has 2 Twilight Zone twists in it, if I remember correctly. So there you have it, folks.
Yep. Stay tuned. That's going to be a good episode next week, and we've already talked a little bit about, we're going to put some extra elbow grease in it because we want it to do it justice. It's a really good episode. It's my number 2 episode. It's great.
Yeah, I'm going to have to see where it falls in with what we've already watched in the rest of the episodes, but yeah, it's definitely up there. So with that being said, be on the lookout for next week for episode 30 of Stop at Willoughby. And Eric, I think that's a wrap on this episode.
And cut.
Miss Helen Foley, who has lived in night and who will wake up to morning. Miss Helen Foley, who took a dark spot from the tapestry of her life and rubbed it clean. Then stepped back a few paces and got a good look at the Twilight Zone.